From Exodus 34 and verse 13 and 14 we read, "But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves." Now there's two things in this text I'd like to share with you. The first is this word images. The second one is the word groves. This word images in the Hebrew lends itself towards something physical that can be seen, touched, or has weight to it. The groves lends itself to something that the children of Israel were doing. They were taking the trees and cutting all the limbs down and making phallic symbols out of them. Phallic symbol being, of course, associated with the sun. In fact, they were making a whole grove of phallic symbols. It goes on in verse 14, "For thou shalt worship no other God." So we can see that this God was related to the images and groves. "For the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." So God was jealous over these images and groves that were related to other gods, being related to the sun god. I want to take you now to Jeremiah 43, verse 13. "He shall break also the images of Bethshemesh, that is, in the land of Egypt, and the houses of the gods of the Egyptians shall he burn with fire." Now there's a couple things also in this verse that are important to us in this study. You'll first notice the word Bethshemesh. That word in the Hebrew means the sun land or sun house. And of course you'll notice that it is in the land of Egypt, which is important because later on Ellen White's got something very important to say about Seventh-day Adventists in the land of Egypt. It goes on to say, "And the houses of the gods of the Egyptians shall he burn with fire." So here we have in the land of Egypt images in the land or the house of the sun. In our next text, Ezekiel 8, 5 and 6, let's move forward because it gets interesting. In verse 5, "Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up mine eyes the way toward the north, and I behold northward at the gate of the altar this image of jealousy in the entry." Now let me share with you just a couple important things about this text. We know, of course, that north symbolizes Babylon, Jeremiah 25:9. We also know from Isaiah that Lucifer wanted to put his kingdom in the sides of the north. So he's looking toward the north, and he beholds this gate, and at the gate, this image of jealousy. Now remember in our earlier text, we learned that God was jealous over these false gods. And you'll notice that now that he's not just jealous, he's calling this altar the image of jealousy. Now later on, as we go forward in this text, or in this chapter, you remember later on in the chapter, there were these 25 men. These 25 men were looking eastward, and they were worshiping the sun. So this altar, this image of jealousy, is related to the worship of the sun. This word image here also is interesting because this image is different than the first two texts we looked at. This image encompasses symbols. And that's where it gets important in our study today. Now I ask you, keeping in mind the second commandment, is God jealous over this? Folks, this is a phallic symbol with a sun in it. This is exactly what Ezekiel 8, 5, and 6 are talking about. A phalanx. The phalanx and the sun. Breaking the second commandment. But does this significance, this one review article has significance to us as we move forward in this study? And the only thing I can tell you is it certainly does. So symbols. I want to share with you just a little bit before we get into our study how Lucifer uses symbols in the science of symbology. First of all, we know that symbols imply information. When I'm driving down the road and I see this little fishy on the bumper, I immediately have been conditioned to think that this symbolizes Christian. In fact, it wouldn't even need the word Christian on it. I've been so conditioned to just know that. So symbols can condition. And they can condition us to imply information. Symbols are a shortcut to communication, often tying together apparently unrelated information. Now, if I'm driving down a country road and I look down and my gas tank is reading empty, I'm getting a little bit concerned, and I look over the trees and I see this big sign coming, then I sigh a sigh of relief, because I know that there's going to be possibly gas there for me, and I'm not going to have to walk down the road with my gas can. That's good. But you'll notice this little symbol. This little symbol is a symbol of the sun. Now, this symbol, being a shortcut to communication, does not tell me what kind of gas he has, whether he does repairs, what octane it is. It is a shortcut. So symbols can potentially confuse the issues because the details are not clearly articulated. Let's learn just a little bit more. There are two ways of interpreting symbols: rational and intuitive. Rational means I seek to understand the intended meaning or the original meaning. The intuitive aspect, one that the New World Order is interested in, is they want us to seek the meaning by our experience, our feelings, our emotions. Now, you'll notice that many of the things that are coming into the churches today, including the Adventist church, celebration, NLP, New Age, Jungian psychology, are all based and all play a role in this intuitive concept. Feeling, emotion. Symbols work best on man's intuitive side because it removes the necessity for clear articulation of issues. This is why we see more and more symbols coming into Christian literature. Why you'll see more and more symbols in Adventist literature. Because symbols can confuse issues, and they don't clearly articulate issues. They don't want you to clearly articulate the issues. Hence, lots of symbols. From the book, The Seeing of the Mind's Eye, it tells us here that symbols, in fact, build up intuition. So it's a vicious cycle. They want you to interpret them intuitively, but the very symbols you're looking at build up that process. From the book, The Mystic Spiral, I want you to notice something here very interesting. It says, symbols cut directly through all the layers and windings of our consciousness. That's interesting. That's the same thing that they say NLP does. So this book is telling us that symbols can bypass our conscious level and go right into our consciousness. Very dangerous. In fact, some people feel that symbols are even more dangerous than NLP. In the book Under the Spell of Mother Earth, we read from page 136. Earth-based religions use art including signs and symbols. Earth-based religions, please note that. I'm hoping that most of you that are watching, in fact all of you that are watching this program, don't want to belong to an earth-based religion, but a heaven-based religion. Because earth-based religions use symbols. What do they use these for? They use them to express their beliefs, worship their deities, and invoke spiritual powers. Even the Bible has something to say about symbols. You probably thought that there wouldn't be anything in the Bible about symbols, but here we go from Psalm 74, verse 4. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations. They set up their ensigns, that means symbols, for signs. Now animals do that. They go around and mark their territory. And Satan does the same thing. He marks his territory in his churches with symbols. So you know that Satan is in your church. Now, I want to take you to the god Shiva. Very interesting god. This god Shiva is the sun god. He's, in fact, the child of the sun. And you'll notice that he's dancing. You'll notice that he's playing a drum. They had a little different drum at that time. And he does a very interesting dance. So let's go with god Shiva and find out just a little bit more about him. You'll see here from the book Two Babylons that Shiva, right here, Shiva or Siva as it's in some places pronounced, is a child of the sun. He has the same name as Saturn and Latinus. And he, as you know, has a certain way he does a dance. And there's this very specific way that he does this dance. From the encyclopedia, we find out how this sun dance is done. You'll notice here it says, the sun dance was the great summer ceremony of the Plains Indians. All the bands of the tribes came together to perform their ceremonies and transact tribal business. The teepees were pitched in a great circle, and the sun dance pole was set up in the middle of the enclosure. Now I want to stop right there. Just picture a circle, because there's many ways of doing this sun dance. Think of a circle with something in the center, like a circle with a dot or something like that. There are many ways, as you will see. We're going to show you some examples of how this sun dance was done. Here you can see Indians doing a sun dance. You'll see the sun dance pole in the center. And here you'll see some Christians doing it. This is from the Omaha Herald. Again, the sun dance pole in the center with the Christians around the outside. Now, you remember in one of those first texts we looked at that there was a sun house in the land of Egypt. You'll also notice here that this symbol right here, circle with a dot in the center, this is the symbol that correlates with the sun dance. So you have a real sun dance and then you have a matching symbol. Please notice it comes from Egypt, matches that house, that sun house in the land of Egypt. You'll notice that it means the sun god day. Isn't that interesting? Now, going along a little further, let's pick up something very interesting from Ellen White as we begin to put some pieces of the puzzle together. She says in 5T, verse 217, the church, talking about the Seventh-day Adventist church, has turned back from following Christ her leader and is steadily retreating toward Egypt, the very country where this symbol comes from. So they're not threatening to go back like the Israelites did. They've in fact turned around. And when you turn around, face your back towards Christ, there's only one person, folks, that you can be heading towards. And that's Lucifer. He's the only other god of the universe. One other definition for this symbol, the circle with the dot in the center, is the point within the circle is the sign of Lucifer. It says Mystery Marks of the New Age by Tex Mars. So now let's take a look at some high-tech graphics from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is subliminal. This is hypnosis. And I want to tell you folks, it's very, very dangerous stuff. You'll please notice the first thing the Adventists do on this cover of Guide magazine is to fracture the Sabbath. That's a symbol of doing away with it. Then you'll notice that they have a nice, bright, shiny sun coming up from behind it. So away with the Sabbath and up with the sun. Now, to make sure that you get the effect of this subliminal graphics in your mind, you'll notice that down below they put a circle with the dot in the center, Lucifer's sun god day. In fact, they call it God's radical day. And of course, we know that Jesus' real Sabbath is not a radical day. That's Lucifer's radical day because there's his symbol, God Lucifer. You'll also notice that we have 3 A's with some 2 wavy lines going through each A. And of course, if you look up in your symbol book, you'll find out that this means anarchy. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church is uplifting Lucifer's sun god day and promoting anarchy against God's Sabbath and lifting up the sun. Now, how does the mind know that that circle with the dot in the center is actually the sun? Because if I just saw a circle with a dot in the center, someone would argue, well, my mind's not going to know that that's talking about Sunday. So I want to show you one example of how they do this. This is from the magazine, Seventh-day Adventist Church, Inside Out. You'll please notice in this particular example, they put a circle with a dot in the center, and they make sure that you know this is the sun. So next time I see it, I don't have to see the sun rays. My mind will know it's the sun. You'll also notice the yellow balloon. You'll also notice the young lady is looking directly at the sun. And you'll also notice something else very interesting here. Some would say, boy, that's interesting, the word orange. Well, I got a surprise for you. This is more subliminal. You remember that Shiva did the sun god dance. The lord of the dance he is. So you'll please notice the word dance here. D-A-N-C-E. Sundance. I want to show you some more examples of how the Adventist Church is using this subliminal Egyptian symbol to promote and prepare the minds of Seventh-day Adventists to accept Sunday worship and thus receive the mark of the beast. So all of these examples will be from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Man, the image of God, a Lucifer God. See another example from Insight Magazine, the little sun rays with the pencil putting the dot in the middle of the circle. From the Adventist Review, you'll please notice something about love. I guess this is talking here about Lucifer's brand of love. And of course, you know that the churches are preaching this love message, this ooey-gooey stuff, you know, just love, 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 don't worry about obedience. And there we have the symbol again. Please notice right in the center, there we have the new logo for the Voice of Prophecy. Circle with a dot in the center. Lucifer's sun god day. The Lord. Inside Magazine. Circle with a dot in the center. Circle with a dot in the center. Lucifer's sun god day. Here's another one, the marked Bible. Here you'll notice another way of conditioning the mind to know that that circle with a dot in the center is related to sun or sun worship. Here we have the circle with the dot in the center and the sun. You'll please notice a ship coming out of that sun. That's the yin-yang ship. Black and white, good and evil can coexist together. Here's another one. Even the young children in the Adventist cradle roll and primary divisions are seeing these circles with the dots in the center. Here you have maybe 100 symbols of Lucifer's sun god day. The cradle roll, Lucifer's sun god day. Here we have another circle with a dot in the center, this one being the sun. They want the kids to hit the target. And in this case, relating the sun to service to God. In this one here, from the Review and Herald, you'll please notice we have an environmental scene, the tree. And you know, when we get up in the morning, and if it's early, we would expect to see the sun coming up behind the mountains and the trees. That's what your mind expects. But you'll please notice, instead of the sun, they're conditioning the mind to the circle with the dot in the center by putting that circle with the dot in the center exactly where the sun would be. Another way of conditioning your mind, your subconscious mind, to receive that as the sun god day or sun worship. In fact, we've picked up almost 13 or 14 of these trees appearing in literature around the world in Adventist circles. Insight magazine. This one is also very high-tech subliminal. And you'll please notice it says, so what? Circle with a dot in the center. Lucifer's sun god day. So what? Big difference. The spiral, promoting a state of ecstasy. The three wavy lines, promoting the New World Order, which we're going to get into a little later. In fact, this whole cover, folks, is spiritualism. And the message in this cover is, makes no difference which day you keep. Breath of Life, new logo for them. Circle with a dot in the center. Lucifer's sun god day. Yes, almost every logo in the Seventh-day Adventist Church is being changed to encompass the move towards Sunday worship. Here we have a bag. It's a bag that you can get now at the ABC stores to take your books home. And you'll please notice that it's in yellow. Lucifer's sun god day, Lucifer's sun god day. You books, you just can't put down. Now, in Revelation, you know that we're going to have this Sunday day of worship, but you'll also remember that it's going to be enforced through a boycott. So it's interesting to note that as we go in now to another area of symbols, we're going to be looking at the symbol, Satan's symbol, for enforcing this Sunday. So now let's go to Barbara G. Walker, her book on symbols. We're going to learn something very interesting. This horseshoe was originally brought forth by the occult. And of course, different aspects and different religions started arguing about this horseshoe, and they couldn't decide which way to put it. So they decided to compromise. That's what this is all telling us about here. They decided to put one up and one down. And of course, when you put one up and one down and you keep going, guess what you come up with? You come up with a wavy line. And you'll notice down here it says the wavy line represents the lunar serpent. You remember the serpent? The serpent's a symbol of Satan, Lucifer, the devil. From the book Terrific Meetings, we have that wavy line representing spiritualism. So it represents Satan, and of course it would naturally represent his religion, spiritualism. From the two Babylons, we want to learn just a little bit more. You'll notice here it says, the dragon of the Greeks, says Pernicius, was only a large snake. a fiery serpent. The patronage of Nimrod, going all the way back, of course, to ancient Babylon. There is the strongest evidence that the apostasy among the sons of Noah began in fire worship, and that in connection with the symbol of the serpent. So the symbol of the serpent, the wavy line that we just looked at, is also connected to fire worship or sun worship, going back to ancient Babylon. You'll also notice in 2 Babylons, page 277, that it even emphasizes it just a little bit more. It says, along with the sun, so now the sun comes into the picture, the great fire god, it says that the sun was identified and worshipped with the serpent. It then goes on to say, in the mythology of the primitive world, says Owen, the serpent is universally the symbol of the sun. So that wavy line is connected to sun worship. One more step we need, and then we'll get into some more important areas. But see, first we have to build the building blocks. And then after we build the building blocks, then we'll understand more what's going on. In this book called The Illuminati 666, we're going to find out something very interesting about the 3 wavy lines, because now we're going to graduate from 1 wavy line to 3 wavy lines. And this book helps us to do that. It says, another way the number 666 was hidden, which can be unmasked, is in learning the origin of the trident sign. Earlier we learned that the sun god's weapon, please notice that, the sun god's weapon was stylized into a pitchfork. The pitchfork had 3 prongs. Hence, we have today the trident sign. So please notice that first came the trident sign. That evolved into a pitchfork. And as you'll remember, the pitchfork had 3 prongs. 3 prongs. Now, we want to go to the next slide, and we want to find out just what kind of prongs this pitchfork had. So remember, we had the trident sign, 666. Then we had the pitchfork. The pitchfork is a symbol of enforcement, the weapon. A weapon is used for capturing, destroying, forcing. So here we have an actual artifact of the original pitchfork from Babylon. And you'll notice that it has 3 wavy lines. Instead of 1-6 for 1 wavy line, now we've gone to 666. Even the occult uses this 3 wavy lines. From the book Mind and Magic, we learned that the occult uses these as one of their 5 symbols in the Zinner cards. The Zinner cards, of course, would be something that hopefully you're not going to be interested in. It was used to test clairvoyant capability. Now we're ready to understand some things that the Adventist Church is doing. You'll please notice in this Adventist review that we have a phallic symbol going through the eye into the mind of this person on this picture. Now that's interesting. So just what are they trying to put into the minds of Seventh-day Adventists through the eyes, through the senses? They're putting into the minds of Seventh-day Adventists the 3 wavy lines, the symbol for enforcing Sunday worship. You see, folks, Laodiceans saw this, and they said, wow, that's an interesting graphic. And of course, being blind, as Laodiceans are, they went home then and went to sleep, not knowing at all that this is a symbol and a message to the rest of the world that Adventists are preparing, Adventist leaders are preparing Adventists to receive the mark of the beast and to be switched over to Sunday worship, the weapon. Now you also notice that we have a triangle coming out of the mouth. New Age triangle, You know, the Bible talks about that God wants, in fact, it says that out of the mouth come the issues of the heart. That's the concept. So the Adventists not only want to put this symbol into the minds of Seventh-day Adventists, they want them to share it. And you'll also notice that we have something interesting. You see these little marks? Let me just come to the side a little bit and make these available to you so you can see them clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little marks, and they're forming a number. And upside down, 6, the symbol for the serpent. High-tech subliminalism, preparing minds, the subconscious, to receive the mark of the beast. You'll also notice this magazine from the General Conference called Dialogue. Goes out to all the colleges and universities around the world. And you'll please notice something very interesting. First you'll notice there's the yellow, and we have a house, and we have 3 pillars. Now if you've read Counsels to Writers and Editors, you know that Ellen White makes reference to the pillars, uses pillars in fact, to represent the 3 angels' messages. The Catholics tell us that when we have wavy lines going up and down, that's a symbol of power. And of course, they're naturally, as we would expect, in the color of the sun. So we have 3 wavy lines. And remember, the wavy line represents not only power, but that's the enforcement area. So it has power to enforce Sunday worship and cancel out the 3 angels' messages. Folks, you know, we don't have to guess at this work. We don't have to guess that this what this symbols means. Any professional in symbols that you will take this to, and you take him the quotes, he will tell you this is exactly what this means. This is not a joke, folks. This is serious business. And you'll also please notice that over the house, we have the symbol for serpent. We have the symbol for Satan. Remember 74:4? Satan puts his symbols in the midst of the congregations. Well, there it is. GC Countdown, Utrecht 95. 3 wavy lines. The enforcement, the symbol for enforcement of the mark of the beast. Now keep in mind, folks, I could keep you here all day and show you many, many of these symbols. I'm only giving you a few examples. That doesn't look like 3 angels to me. Looks like 3 wavy lines. You find them on the front of the General Conference in Maryland, right on the logo. Seventh-day Adventist, 3 wavy lines. We find it on Pathfinder uniforms now. This is a new one. 3 wavy lines. The symbol, the enforcement for Sunday worship. The Adventist Review, in the logo of the A, 3 wavy lines. 666. The Babylonian Trinity to enforce Sunday worship. Now this one is very interesting. This is an advertisement that had appeared in different magazines in the Adventist Church. You'll notice here it says that the Adventist Single Ministry, so we have no question about where it comes from or who it's about. It says National Single Adult Conference. You'll please notice up on top it has a symbol for Satan, the serpent. Then you'll notice down below, in real light colors, we have 1, 2, 3 wavy lines. The symbol for enforcement of the mark of the beast, Sunday worship. The weapon. You'll also notice that we have a set of 2 wavy lines. And you probably might be asking yourself, what are these 2 wavy lines about? Well, if you'll go home and get your newspaper out or go to the library, you can simply look this up in any dictionary or any New Age book, and they will tell you that this 2 wavy lines is a symbol of the coming age of Aquarius. And they will tell you also something very interesting, that it correlates with the sun's activity. So, folks, we're expecting the Sunday law to come fairly rapidly, because when you see Satan's symbols, you know that it's at hand. The symbols, says the New Age, correlate with the sun's activity. This whole thing is spiritualism. We had a friend that took this to a New Age movement, and you know what he said? He thought we were his brother. Andrews University. Now you can take your kids to Andrews University and take them out to the playground, and they can play on a symbol representing Satan. Yes, Satan puts his symbols into the midst of the congregation. He marks his territory. Now from Message Magazine. Now you remember that dialogue magazine we had where we saw the one on top of the roof and then the three down below with the pillars? Very often you will see three with one on the side. That's Satan and the enforcement weapon. The three wavy lines, 666. So here you can see again we have 1, 2, 3 and then one to the side. But this is not the significant one I want to share with you. Let's go to the next slide here. And I want to show you from Message Magazine. You'll please notice we have the green for environment. Adventists like green a little bit more than they're liking red lately. And you'll please notice that we have the sun, circle with the dot in the center, with the cross. So we have the Lucifer sun god day. Then we have the green for the environment. That's important because we're going to be talking a little bit later about something called an environmental Sabbath. Notice even the sun rays and the trees are in wavy lines. Then we have a boy staring at the sun on an upside down cross. When we have an upside down cross, that means defeat. And you'll notice down below we have the three wavy lines enforcing this Lucifer's sun god day. Very interesting. Folks, there can be no mistaking what these symbols are for. From Adventist View magazine, you'll please notice again we have the color yellow and we have the three wavy lines connected with the head. You'll please notice the head is also a yin-yang head. Truth and error, good and bad, right and wrong can coexist together. You can be a Sunday worshiper and a Sabbath worshiper. Think we might find out something like that? Well, let's go forward. A little later on, we might run across something like that. Inside that magazine, again, you'll see the sun, the dot in the center with the sun rays. But the dangerous one in this magazine is the next one. Let's go take a look at that. Here you'll notice, in this Adventist View, on the inside, we have, if you can pick it up on the screen, some light wavy lines going down the inside of this page. All the way across the page, wavy line, wavy line, wavy line going down. And you'll notice that there are three going right into her forehead. Very interesting. You'll also notice that this lady has the sun reflecting upon her head and her glasses. Folks, this is none other than Satan putting his symbols in the Adventist magazine. This woman is receiving, symbolically speaking, the mark of the beast. This magazine says, is Signs a powerful magazine? Well, I'd have to say yes, because you'll notice in this leopard, we have three wavy lines subliminally hidden. Let me show them to you. 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice that this leopard also has some circles with the dots in the center. You'll also notice, please, that this leopard does not look like a normal leopard. This leopard looks like Lucifer, and so he is. You'll please notice right down here, this is a wavy line, a symbol of Satan. Even we have the egg at the top, the hatching of the egg connected with the serpent. Yes, this is a powerful magazine because it is working on the minds of Seventh-day Adventists. Let's go to the next slide. In this Adventist Review, 9789, I want to share with you something very interesting. It says here, 7 things teenagers are dying to tell their parents. I want you to notice what this teenager is dying to tell his parents. You'll please notice over here, this young boy has 3 wavy lines coming out of his mouth. You also please notice the little lines coming away from his head, kind of suggesting a sun. And so this boy wants to tell his parents about the 3 wavy lines. You remember the earlier cover we had with the phallic symbol going through the eye with the triangle. They want them to share. Well, this also is the concept of sharing. Sharing about Sunday. Here we have Guide Magazine. Again, 1, 2, 3 wavy lines. The sun god weapon. Here again from Primary Treasury. You're going to be noticing 3 sets of 3 wavy lines. 666. 666. 666. 3 sets of 3 wavy lines. You'll also please notice the star, which is almost an exact duplicate of the Rosa Crucifixus. So all over Adventist literature is appearing these circles with the dots in the center, Lucifer, Sun God, Day, and the 3 wavy lines, the weapon to enforce it. Up here we have the logo for the Southern California Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. You'll notice we have the sun sailing over the waters new. Waters, of course, in the Bible representing people, the sun over the people. Again, 2 wavy lines. The sun correlates with, the 2 wavy lines correlate with the sun's activities, indicating to us that we're getting close to the mark of the beast, the enforcement of Sunday worship. Again, 2 wavy lines. Again, 2 wavy lines. The Adventist Review. 1 set of 3 wavy lines. 1 set of 2 wavy lines. The enforcement of the Sun God Day. The activity of the Sun God Day. 1 set of 3. 1 set of 2. Here you can see from Primary Treasure, 1, 2, 3 set of ways. Folks, it comes in many forms and in many ways. And I'm sure that you'll spot them. But folks, I wouldn't even recommend that you read Adventist literature because it's full of occult symbols. Spiritualism has no business being in front of our eyes, to tell you the truth. You know, it's hard to even pick up an Adventist magazine today and spot one of the logos for the Adventist Church. On this one here, I want you to notice right down here, this is the new logo for Pacific Press. And in it they've encompassed the 3 wavy lines. And this article, or this advertisement, I guess we might call it, for the book On the Edge, you'll notice it's subliminally here says, the 3 wavy lines. It's here. Well, we know that for sure now. It's controversial, and we certainly know that. And it's real, and folks, you'd better know that. Amen. Peanut butter and jelly secrets. You'll notice here, even Adventist books are beginning to put the symbol on the front of their books. 1, 2, 3 wavy lines. Notice the wavy line, the separate one for Satan coming down out of the post. Many ways of doing it. I hope you don't even let your children read this book because it suggests disobedience. Here we have another one, hot chocolate friendship. Again, the 1 wavy line and then the 3 going across the book. Please notice fire worship and the yellow for the color of the sun. Again from Message Magazine, New Age triangle in yellow. 60-degree angles. This is an equilateral, so it's 6, 6, 6. The boy graduating to sun worship. And of course, sharing again with others, telling this boy about sun worship. And of course, the 3 wavy lines, the sun god weapon to enforce that worship. Again, spiritualism. Again, now, what do you think the Adventists might have to say about this 3 wavy lines? This is from the Adventist Review, March 5, 1992. Please notice what they say here. Created by Brian Gray, a former designer at Review and Herald, the design has 3 stripes. They're a little uncomfortable with calling it wavy lines, that are reminiscent of the 3 angels of Revelation 14. Now that's an interesting word, reminiscent. You know, I checked that word in my dictionary, and I found something very interesting. It says there, only reminds you of. Isn't that something? So these 3 wavy lines are only remind you of the 3 angels. They're not really the 3 angels. Interesting word that they used here. One other form of the 3 wavy lines that I want to briefly look at today is called the elongated yod. It says here, the acorn section, that's the fire wand, should be decorated with elongated yellow yods. Wouldn't you expect it to be in yellow? The Hebrew letter as shown below. Now what they did is they took the yod, which I believe is the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and they stretched it out, making it a wavy line. And of course it says there, you'll notice there, it says there should be a total of 3. So the fire wand, fire worship, yellow, sun worship, yods stretched out, 3 of them. Again, we have another way of coming about and bringing about the sun god weapon. So what do Adventists do? They use this one lots of times too. They leave no tricks unturned to make sure that they're working on your mind and getting you ready. You'll please notice almost all of them go from yellow to red or use red, fire or sun worship. Here we have a good example of that. We have 1, 2, 3, yellow, the color of the sun. 666, the sun god weapon. Here we have another one. Question mark. Subliminally getting you to question the Bible. And of course here we have the fire wand, yellow to red, sun worship to fire worship. 6, 6, 6. Pacific Union Recorder. Another example of this. Here we have the fire wand in yellow, the color of the sun. You'll notice that there are 3 of them. 666, the sun god weapon. One other one. From the North Pacific Union Gleaner. You'll see down here we have the double triangles, male and female. The female god and the male god with the fire wand up on top. 666. Now, do the Adventists know what they're doing? Some of you may be saying now, well, who's doing this terrible thing? Why are they doing it? Do they know really what they're doing? I think that's a good question. And I'd like the Adventist leadership to answer the question for you. Let's go to the Adventist Review, June 6, 1991. Now here we have an interesting article. It's titled, Are You Biblically Literate? The article, by the way, starts right out attacking independent ministries. And by the way, I want to tell you a lot of phrases that are Adventists were using. Independent ministries. And I'd like to tell you, there is only one kind of ministry that God recognizes, and that's a dependent ministry. And I hope by the grace of God that if you're in a ministry that you're dependent upon God, because I don't believe in independent ministries. So if you're without God, then you're an independent ministry. Just thought I'd throw that in for you. It goes on, this article, to talk about how Seventh-day Adventists should become biblically and culturally literate. And then they go on to suggest ways in which you might do that. And I'd like to share with you, we're going to blow the article up for you, and we're going to show to you what Adventists, how Adventists think you can become biblically literate. Now notice, it says right here, a basic knowledge of the culture. That's what you need. And then they quote Mr. Hirsch, who states, speaking of his own country, the United States, Hirsch argues, now watch this, only by accumulating shared symbols. So the Adventists are recommending that we accumulate shared symbols. And the shared information that the symbols represent. Have we not already been seeing them doing that? So not only are they doing it, but they're recommending that that's what they ought to do. So you see, folks, their words go with their actions. Only by doing this, they say, can Americans learn to communicate effectively with one another in their national community. Well, you just might as well stick New World Order right there with the words national community. From the Spirit of Prophecy, we read, from Volume 1 of the Testimonies, page 290 and 291. He therefore transforms himself into an angel of light and works upon the mind. That's exactly what you've been seeing, folks. The Spirit of Prophecy is coming true right before your eyes. However, from maybe a little unexpected source than you were expecting. The sciences of phrenology, psychology, talking about NLP, mesmerism, which would include symbology, are the channels through which he comes more directly to this generation and works with that power which is to characterize his efforts near the close of probation. Satan has come unperceived through these sciences and has poisoned the minds of thousands and led them to infidelity. Now, I want to take you to some straightforward statements now that the Adventists, indeed by word, not just by symbol, but by word, are telling you that you need to be a Sunday worshiper. Indirectly, but I think you'll get the point. This is from the North Pacific Union Gleaner, 8/7/95. So you can see that we're pretty up to date on this thing. It says here, suppose an Adventist pastor were to stand at the General Conference Assembly and call for Adventist congregations to begin to hold Sunday morning worship services in their churches. Silence would descend, deathly silent, shocked, cold, unearthly. Well, I got to tell you, folks, I don't believe that, but let's go on. The motion would be lost for lack of a second. The guard would offer to escort the pastor to the offices of the nearest mental health professional. Now, given half a chance, the pastor could righteously point out that Sunday worship can be done without Sunday keeping. That's interesting. And that Sunday worship allows for Sabbath keeping. That's interesting too. Let's go on to the top of the next page. It says here, and services the day before. People are used to going to church on Sunday. We can preach about the Sabbath Sunday, he might say. Now, why is that important, folks? That's important because if you'll read your Great Controversy, page 54, around in that area, you'll find out that the first step,
that's Satan,
to move the New Testament church to Sunday worship was resurrection. The resurrection, the Easter service. The second step was to start bringing both days together. Now let's go on and let's read just a little bit more about this article. It gets very interesting. I honestly believe that the day will come when some Adventist churches will host Sunday morning evangelistic meetings and seekers classes without raising there a gray whisker of dissent. And perhaps as the harvest grows wider, that's interesting, the Adventists there are admitting there's a harvest on. Maybe better think about that a little bit. And the call for spirit-filled workers more intense, views will change regarding ordination of women. That's interesting. Do you notice how he picked one subject, used that subject, and then went right into a totally different subject? In NLP, we call that fogging. Let's go on to the next slide. Again, from the Adventist Review. My witness as a Sunday keeper. From the Adventist Review, 8/24/89. Now let's go down to the bottom here. I want to show you something interesting. It says here, the Sabbath is God's only holy day. And I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath keeper. I've always been a Sabbath keeper. I'm sure I always will be. But I have found I can be a good Sunday keeper also. It says as we go to the top of the next page. That's interesting. I'm a Sabbath keeper, I always will be. But I can be a good Sunday keeper. In fact, he says, my witness as a Sunday keeper. Watch out, folks. This denomination is moving towards Sunday worship. Interesting letter from England. This is dealing with a letter that was sent to Margaret Thatcher from London. It was written by John Arthur, Vice President there of the Union. And you remember, maybe you're aware of, a little bit aware of this, the Commons there voted down a national closing Sunday law bill. But John felt that that wasn't right. So he wrote them a letter telling them that they ought to reconsider the proposal contained in the Sunday trading bill. And of course, after they did that, you'll never guess what they did. They gave him a higher position in the church. Here's another two interesting items. You'll please notice the one up in the right-hand corner. It says, this is from the Recorder, 6490 in California, an Adventist magazine there. It says, what do Seventh-day Adventists believe? Here, Pastor Evangelist Jerry Webb present a fresh look at the truth. Let's find out what truths he's talking about here. It says, subjects include Christians of other faiths and the remnant. Christ-centered reasons for Sunday worship. Now, you know, folks, I'd like for Jerry Webb just to come up and show me just one text. That's all I want. One text for Christ-centered reasons of Sunday worship. You'll also notice down here, the other article from the Adventist Review is called Sunday Morning Evangelism. And it also talks about the need for doing services on Sunday. You see how they're working here. I mean, you've got to be, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on here. And even if you're a Laodicean, I think you can catch on. You notice down here it says, a church I know is laying plans for Sunday morning evangelism. It will provide morning health program, jogging and health screening. The people will then meet in small fellowship groups to discuss topics of concern to the community. After a group sing, there will be a short Bible message. The morning activities will end with a potluck brunch. Now, that sounds like the Seventh-day Church Seventh-day Adventist Church I used to go to. Potluck, Bible topics. There's not much difference there, folks. So I think you can see what they're doing. Now, a couple more interesting comments. This is from Signs of the Times, March 1990, page 22 and 23. God is glad for us to go to church both days. Isn't that interesting? Saturday and Sunday. He wants us to worship Him both days. Anybody who takes out a whole day, out every week to spend with God, will have more of God's power in his life. And God can do more through him and in him. One more comment. Here, this is from Clifford Goldstein's book, A Pause for Peace, What God's Gift of the Sabbath Can Mean for You. Now, an interesting statement, folks, and I want you to go out and get this book, and I want you to read these things and check these things out. I want you to go home and just believe what somebody tells you. You study it out for yourself, okay? Now, this book, later on, after this comment, says that it would be better for us to keep the Sabbath. So let's go now and let's read what the statement says. While the Sabbath commandment has a distinct practical value, the specific day in and of itself doesn't. Thus, keeping any other day could work. Let's look at some miscellaneous things in the area of subliminal graphics dealing with Sunday worship. In this magazine from Insight 493, I want you to notice right here, it states, "Make the sun appear." And of course, down below we have a symbol of the Roman sun god. From the hymnal, Adventist hymnal, page 403, "When I fall on my knees with my face to the rising sun," S-U-N. Here from a Seventh-day Adventist church in British Columbia, Canada. Please notice here we have, can you find the right path to the sun? And you'll please notice it says Jesus had to find the right way. And then they have Jesus making his way to the sun. How many suns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the mark of the beast. Then you'll notice right down here it says make an X on the things that Jesus did not have in the wilderness. Well, he didn't have a hamburger and a Coke, but he did have a sun. He didn't have a phone. He didn't have a bike. He didn't have a bed, but he did have a sun. I think you're catching on. Please notice this primary cover. Sabbath School Lesson, 1992. You'll please notice the boy worshiping the sun. And in this case, it's the environmental Sabbath because we have the environment mixed in with the Antichrist who was outside the world in the picture frame. Looking on, imagine the Antichrist on the cover of a Seventh-day Adventist magazine. Another Adventist book, Above Suffering and Guilt. Please notice the horseshoe, the three wavy lines, the sun god weapon with the sun. Please notice here in this one down here in the left-hand corner, we have the third angel replaced by the sun. Over here we have Jesus in the door. Remember in the New Testament it says, I am the door. We have the three wavy lines going by Jesus right to the sun, the circle with a dot in the center. Folks, this is all spiritualism. And of course up here noting your relationship to God. You need to talk with God. But here we have the phone line going through the sun with the sun in the mind of the Seventh-day Adventist receiving the mark of the beast. So there's only one way to Jesus according to Seventh-day Adventist, and that's through the sun. Teen Magazine. We're noticing a lot of sevens appear. 7 with the sun. Why do they put these 7s with the sun? Here's another one. 7 with the sun. Adventist Review. Well, let me show you something interesting. This is also subliminal, because you'll notice this calendar from the United States. We have Sunday as the 7th day of the week. I think you're catching on here. 7 with the sun, 7 with the sun, 7 with the sun. The 7s with the sun, the literal, are to prepare for this, the calendar, 7 with the sun. It's all high-tech, folks. In this Adventist Review, it says, look up, Jesus is coming. And what do we find? A sun coming up. In fact, in this one magazine, there were 14 sun symbols. Golgotha, resurrection with the sun coming up. Here we have a book entitled Welcome to the Family, but just not any family. This is welcoming Seventh-day Adventists, a Seventh-day Adventist book to the Sun family. Now I want to go through a series of books with you. You'll please notice as we go through these series of books, all of them Adventists, that they're going to put the sun in the center of the book because they want the sun to be the center of your attention. So here we go. All Adventists. Sun, the center of your book. Question mark, is your soul immortal? Prayer, on target. George Vanderman thinks he's E.T. now. Sun in the center of the book. The Desire of Ages, we have Jesus worshiping the sun. Is your God real? Another question mark. Notice all these question marks. Same technique Satan used with Jesus. Is your God real? Sun in the center of the book. Growing up with Jesus, one wavy line, the lunar serpent and his sun god day. Bill White, risen indeed, sun in the center of the book. George Vanderman again, the sun in the center of the book with Mother Earth. Memories, Lou Walton, sun in the center of the book. And let me tell you folks, it didn't take any effort to find all of these books. Just walking down the road. There they are, over and over again. Let's go on to the next one. Prescription for Reconciliation, sun in the center of the book. To Hope Again, Mark Finley and Steve Mosley, sun in the center of the book. Yes, they're trying to put the sun in the minds of Seventh-day Adventists. Harvest 90, the sun, baptizing them into the sun, sun worship. Here we have Cosmic Conflict, the coming of the sun, coming up from behind the earth. Another Adventist book, sun in the center of the book. In this case, the sun is also the dot in the circle. From the Adventist Review, June 12, 86. Please notice the sun. In this Adventist Review, 4/4/85, the sun in the center. Here we go again, the Review and Herald, 1/2/86, the sun. Another Adventist Review. Here we have the sun in the mind with the rays going out. Sun in the center of the book. Here we have Jesus with the sun in his forehead. Implication that Jesus would receive the sun and worship the sun in his mind. Now, I want to switch gears. We're going to go to the United Nations, a United Nations book. This is titled Only One Earth. Here we have the egg, symbolizing the hatching of the one world system, the coming of Sunday worship. Here you'll please notice it says the environmental Sabbath. And of course we have all the symbols for the religions of the world. It says on the inside cover, celebrating the environmental Sabbath, Earth Rest Day, in your ceremonies, rituals, and prayers. Yes, they want you to celebrate Earth Day. Of course, that's what celebration, folks, is all about. Here you'll notice in Seduction of Christianity, page 53, a very interesting comment by Mr. Robert Mueller. The time has come to attain peace on this planet. The United Nations Charter has to be supplemented by a charter of spiritual laws. Well, for you that are good, sound, historical Adventists, I'll bet you can guess what one of those spiritual laws would be. Here we go. Mother Earth, page 15. First of all, we need to know that this New World Order is going to be an environmentally sound New World Order. UN's Noel Brown says, there should be a rightness and a wrongness with the way we live on this earth. We need to create the environmental Sabbath, the ecumenical movement for the earth, and hope it will take hold. It's time to set norms and to establish a new covenant with the earth. Yes, it's going to be a sound environmental New World Order with an environmental Sabbath connected to the ecumenical movement. A religious law. So who's pushing the environment? Please notice, it's the Adventists. Environment from Southern College. Here in this Adventist Review, we have an article called Escape from Ugliness, where it says, how the search for beauty led a young adult into environmental consciousness. Yes, they want the environment in your mind, but more than that, they want the environmental Sabbath in your mind. Caring for the earth, 7 with the sun. Adventist Review 3/10/94. Please notice this. It says, the meeting, which ended with a special worship service on Sabbath in the Sligo Seventh-day Adventist Church, was devoted to the theme, Adventist and the environment. Here's a little consciousness raising in the area of the environment. This is from the Sabbath School Quarterly last year, 94. Key question. Why is it essential for a leader to be a person of vision? How does a leader in God's cause learn to understand God's will for leaders and those who follow? Please notice the leaders they're mentioning, Will Steger and Juan Luis Etienne. What kind of leaders are these? These are leaders that are involved in the global environmental program. They're not talking about Elijah here. They're not talking about Jeremiah. They're talking about leaders in the coming global environmental program, leading us, of course, trying to lead us to the environmental Sabbath. Now, let me bring in something very interesting here. One of the things coming in, of course, is the worship of Mother Earth, the environmental Sabbath. Here we have a statement of what will lead people more easily into this New World Order and its environmental Sabbath. En route to global occupation, page 66. Early on, I had become aware of the fact that the political and economic efforts to create a world government were being undergirded by a network of spiritually motivated organizations that have collectively become known as the New Age movement. The religion of the New Age, simply put, is pantheism, the belief that God is the sum total of all that exists. Pantheism, Mother Earth, worship the earth, worship the sun. You say, surely, Gary, the Adventist Church is not moving back into the pantheistic movement, is it? Well, I'd like to show you a couple very startling articles showing very clearly that Mr. Kellogg's belief is even now being resurrected. This is an article from Signs of the Times, June 94, Christianity and the Environment. Now I want you to please follow down here with me. A very interesting statement. It says, the whole material universe is an expression of the incarnation of the creative energy of God. As a book or a picture is the material expression of the creative soul of the artist. For that reason, all good and creative handling of the universe is holy and beautiful, and all abuse is a crucifixion of the body of Christ. Pure pantheism. Who will accept this New World Order? Those who believe in pantheism. You see, to take care of the earth, if you can get the people to believe in pantheism, means that you're taking care of God. Let's go to another article. This is from the Adventist Review again. Your God is Too Boring is the title of this one. Please notice down here in the right-hand corner, from the Adventist Review, May 19, 1994. O God of winter, remind us that you are the one who haunts the roots, the seed, and the soil. Come to us again. Amen. Pantheism. What did it say? Those who believe in pantheism will automatically accept a new world order. and will accept, of course, the environmental Sabbath of the New World Order. Now you remember God Shiva did a sun dance. But that sun dance is not just a straightforward sun dance. It has a slight curve to it. The God Shiva also does the dance of ecology, the environment. So let's go forward and see where this leads us. The dance of sacred ecology. Walla Walla College, remember those three wavy lines? 1, 2, 3, green for the environment. The sun god weapon, this is the environmental Sabbath, Walla Walla, Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now I want you to notice this very interesting article from the Adventist Review. In the beginning, God created ecology, talking about Prince Philip. They call Prince Philip a distinguished scientist and theologian. And then down here they tell us that there's 1,000 things that Adventists must do to save the earth, our homeland. And of course down here, down at the bottom, they tell us something very, very interesting. They say, we need to create, we need a moral basis for revering the earth. And they gave the last word to a theologian. Now this article goes on to talk about an issue between the Sabbath and Sunday. So we know what they're talking about. The moral basis the Seventh-day Adventist Church is saying that they need is the environmental Sabbath. The Seventh-day Adventist Church call for a moral basis for revering the earth. Now notice this from National Review 829/94. The earth liturgies of the national religious partnerships have done little to clarify this issue and much to confuse it. Unless Orthodox believers are willing to contrast the religious creeds openly, our defenses will be down when Earth Day is proposed and accepted as a holy day of obligation. A holy day of obligation? Let's go on because it gets more interesting. Now I want you to notice this calendar put out by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the North American Division calendar for 1994. 1994, it says the International Year of the Family. The Seventh-day Adventist Church participating with the United Nations. You've probably noticed that this logo has been showing up quite a few places around the world in Adventist literature. Let's take a look at this and see what it means. Here's another example. Heart to Heart, Families, the International Year of the Family. Now, some might say, well, maybe the Adventist Church is not going to know what the United Nations is doing here in terms of that environmental Sabbath, but in this point, we have to kind of disagree with you here. From a Mid-America News Flashes, Miami, Florida, we read that Adventists have been elected to United Nations positions, so they indeed must know what is going on. Especially in the Adventist Review where it says the United Nations honors the Adventist Church. It says the Seventh-day Adventists are actively involved in recognized non-governmental organizations in various UN programs. Yes, the Adventist Church must know what's going on. They must know that the United Nations is interested in this environmental Sabbath. Now, you've seen that they put their logo into their literature, and let's find out now just what this literature means. It states here, Dwight L. Kinman says, the house of the world order, the house of the world order, will have to be built from the bottom up, rather than the top down. And end around, national sovereignty. In other words, they're going to work in secret. Eroding it piece by piece. In other words, a process. It goes on here, down here to talk about the initiates of the New World Order. When they see this heart, they think of this as a hidden symbol of fire or sun worship. So what does this symbol stand for? It stands for, folks, putting sun worship into the house. Now I want to go to a vision by Ellen White. Volume 1 of the Testimonies, page 578. She says, "That night I dreamed that I was in Battle Creek looking out from the side glass at the door and saw a company marching up to the house, 2 and 2. They looked stern and determined, and I knew them well. Turned to open the parlor door, but thought I would look again. The scene was changed. The company now presented the appearance of a Catholic procession. One bore in his hand a cross, another a reed." Of course, we know that the cross is a symbol of the Roman sun god. The reed is a symbol of persecution. Remember, they hit Jesus with the reed. And as they approached, the one carrying the reed made a circle around the house, like Indians used to make circles around the covered wagons, saying 3 times, remember the 3 wavy lines? "This house is prescribed." That means to be captured, to be taken. "The goods, truths, must be confiscated. They have spoken against our holy order." Talking about the great controversy there. "Terror seized me. I ran through the house out the north door, Babylon's door, and found myself in the midst of a company, some of whom I knew. But I dared not speak a word to them for fear of being betrayed. I tried to seek a retired spot where I might weep and pray without meeting eager, inquisitive eyes. Wherever I turned, I repeated frequently, 'If only I could understand this, if they will tell me what I have said or what I have done.'" She goes on to say, "I wept and prayed much as I saw our goods, truths, being confiscated." I think we can see this happening today. The vision, a Catholic procession. The son, persecution. Some of whom I knew, meaning some she didn't know. They circled the house, saying, "This house, church organization is prescribed. The goods, truths, must be confiscated. I ran through the house out the north door, Babylon's door, and I saw our truths taken." I want to go to 2 Babylons, page 155. Pick up the same concept. Here in 2 Babylons, we have a correlation between the vision of Ellen White and an actual event that takes place in Catholicism. As there is reason to believe that the pagan festival of burning lamps, please note burning lamps, was observed in commemoration of the ancient fire worship, lamps, fire worship, so there is a ceremony at Rome in the Easter week. Lamps, fire worship, Easter week, making up a cross of fire, which was the grand object of worship. Goes on to say, this ceremony is thus graphically described. The effect of the blazing cross of fire, suspended from the dome above the confession or tomb of St. Peter's, was strikingly brilliant at night. It is covered with innumerable lamps, which have the effect of one blaze of fire. This is talking about sun worship, folks. The whole church was thronged with a cast of multitude of all classes and countries, from royalty to the meanest beggar, all gazing upon this one object, the cross, lit up. In a few minutes, the Pope, now here comes the procession, and all his cardinals descended into St. Peter's and room, being kept for them by the Swiss guard. A long train of cardinals knelt before him, whose splendid robes, please remember those splendid robes, and attendant train bearer formed a striking contrast to the humility of their attitude. What could be more clear and unequivocal act of fire worship than this? So to gaze upon the cross is an unequivocal act of fire or sun worship. With Holy Thursdays, our miseries began. That is, from the crowding. On this disastrous day, we went before 9 to the Sistine Chapel and beheld a procession. Remember Ellen White's procession? Led by inferior orders of clergy, followed by the cardinals in superb dresses, bearing long wax tapers. Yes, there's only one thing that can come to Adventists when sun worship starts to come in. Then will come the symbol of the reed, persecution. Please notice from Messenger magazine. Hand across the gulf, the highlight on the cross with the light shining down through the middle. Light being connected to the cross. Please notice this flyer for Net 95. We have a cross and a sun. Let's go to the next slide. I want to highlight and blow up this sun for you to show you something very interesting. You'll please notice that we have the disciples looking at the sun. How do we know they're looking to the sun? Because we can see that the hair is designed to give the effect of being to the rear. Please also notice that they're looking at Jesus, who is in the worship position. Also, the hair designed to indicate Jesus is looking or worshiping and staring at the sun. What an abomination. The cross with the sun. The cross with the sun. Here we go again, the Adventist review. The cross with the sun. Light with this cross. Folks, if you read Desire of Ages, you will remember that Ellen White stated very clearly there was no light around the cross. What was around the cross when Jesus was there was total darkness. It was enshrouded in clouds. But yet Adventists would be theologically wrong in doing this, and yet they picture always the sun and light with the cross. Why? Why did he do this? Here we go again, the Adventist review. Light with the cross. And here we have Jesus, his head being the circle with the dot in the center. Lucifer, sun god day, with the light being connected with the cross. In this book, The Remnant, Clifford Goldstein, you'll please notice that the people are in the worship position with the sun shining down through the cross. Here we have another one, Message Magazine. You'll please notice here we have the woman in the worship position with the light behind her connected with the cross. Remember, what did it say in 2 Babylons? It said that the cross was a grand object of fire or sun worship. Adventist Perspectives from Southern Union. Please notice here we have another cross with the sun. In this particular case, you'll please notice that we have the cross going through the forehead of Jesus with the sun in the background. Subliminal teaching that Jesus here approves of sun worship and is receiving the mark of the beast, an abomination to the Lord. Here again, from Message Magazine, we have a boy staring at the sun in the worship position connected with the cross. Remember that procession Ellen White saw? In splendid robes, some of whom she knew. Here we have the symbol again of the cross, the cross, the symbol of the sun. This is Joseph Rodriguez, the Seventh-day Adventist picture. This is not just a cross, folks. This is a Maltese cross, which also connects it to the Virgin Mary. Some of whom I knew. Cox Crusade, Las Vegas, Oscar Lane. Again, the same exact cross in the same exact position. A procession, some of whom I knew, coming to the house. Sun worship, the Roman sun god. Now, why is that important? Well, there's some things going on around the country that I'd like to share with you, and this captures these events pretty uniquely. This is from the Daily Courier in Grants Pass, Oregon. It says, thousands brave mud, drizzle to hear Virgin Mary's message. But please notice what it says. We've blown it up a little bit so it will be more clearer to you. When the sun broke through the clouds during a 90-minute recitation of the Rosary, many onlookers dropped to their knees and stared at the blazing sun. Some reported seeing crosses in the sky, others a silhouette of Mary. So you can see, even in these visions that people are having, Satan is connecting the cross with the sun. So Satan is doing with the world in the sky exactly what the Seventh-day Adventist leadership is doing to Adventists in the periodicals. You remember that this worship took place during Easter week. Resurrection. Let's go forward. From the Morning Herald, it says, the employees of the Review and Herald Publishing Association prepare for Sunday sunrise reenactment of the death and resurrection of Christ. Adventist musicians featured in Hollywood Bowl Easter services. Here from the Pacific Union Recorder, 6187, Santa Ana Spanish members discover new directions. Yes, it's definitely a new direction for evangelism during Easter week meetings. It goes on to say, the plan was that on Easter Sunday, leaders of the neighborhood groups would bring their non-Adventist friends to church. Folks, no matter what way we turn, no matter what way we turn, to see what the world is doing in bringing on the Sunday law or the environmental Sabbath, the Seventh-day Adventists are doing exactly the same in every single area. From Toledo, Seventh-day Adventist Church. Here we go again. Next Sunday morning, 7 a.m., we will celebrate the resurrection of our victorious Savior. Adventist Review. Here we have the some subliminal work going on. We have the eggs color-coded to match the crosses in the word artist. In April, on Easter, promoting the resurrection of the Savior, Easter. I am the resurrection and the life, it says in Signs of the Times, with the sun coming up in the background. Now, let's switch directions just a little bit. It says here in the Great Controversy, the 1884 edition, page 5, the dreaded hour would come suddenly and swiftly, and folks, it's coming. And the Savior warned his followers, we're being warned today. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let it understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. When the idolatrous standards, please note it's plural, of the Romans should be set up in the holy ground which extended some furlongs outside the city walls, then the followers of Christ were to find safety in flight. Folks, Sunday worship is coming rapidly into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I can only warn you folks, it's time to flee. Don't wait, because it's going to come suddenly and swiftly. Standards, it says, the standards of Rome. Folks, how many standards of Rome do we need to wake up and flee so that we can be a part of the 144,000 on His holy mountain? Celebration is a standard of Rome. Hypnosis is a standard of Rome. The environmental Sabbath is a standard of Rome. Symbols are a standard of Rome. Now I want you to notice something very interesting from a dictionary that talks about all the different standards of the ancient civilizations. We have this example of the standard of Rome. What they're saying is the actual standard planted in 70 AD. Please notice, we have the sun with the lion and 1, 2, 3 wavy lines. But you're saying, Gary, do we have more support for this? I can't just take this little picture as evidence totally that this was the original standard. Well, let's give it some support. We're looking at support for the lion and the sun and the 3 wavy lines being connected with the original standard planted in 70 AD. From Manly T. Hall's book on Masonry, you'll please notice here that we have the lion with the sun, alternating rays. This book is talking about ancient standards, and it says that the lion and the sun was actually connected or a symbol of rulership and power in the ancient civilizations. Now, what civilization showed forth the greatest power and authority in the history of this world? None other than Rome. Now, notice something else here interesting from the Bible. In 2 Timothy 4:17, Paul is talking here about his delivery out of Rome, and you'll notice what he says here. Notwithstanding, the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, that by me the preaching might be fully known, and that all the Gentiles might hear. And I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion, Rome. Now, why would Paul talk about being delivered out of the mouth of a lion, equating lion with Rome? Well, folks, there can only be one reason. Because Paul saw things that associated a lion with Rome. Now, there's more support for the lion and the sun and the three wavy lines being connected within the standard of Rome, as we have seen over and over again today in Adventist literature. So the call to flee the standard of Rome, the abomination of desolation, is now being seen in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, I want to share with you a couple interesting things. I have a book in front of me written just after the Pope went to Rome. And it's an interesting book. It says, what news Santo Domingo brings to us. And then on the inside, you'll please note here that it has a group of people on a march in a procession. And please note the picture as we read here. It says, the people of God walk united with hope to the kingdom. That's interesting. And what does it show there in the kingdom? A bright, shiny sun. Now, we've been talking about the standard of Rome being in the Adventist Church. I want to take you now to the General Conference session in Utrecht, Holland, 1995. Now, instead of the Catholics talking about the people of God on their way to the kingdom, we have a picture of Seventh-day Adventists at this General Conference session, the professed people of God, on their way to the kingdom of God. And what's the backdrop? A sun. One more, just to make the point here towards the end of this presentation. You'll please notice that as the people were in this general conference in Utrecht in Holland, that a very interesting little item is being taken through the General Conference session of Seventh-day Adventists. And as all the Seventh-day Adventists look through, what is being taken through it? But the flag of Rome. The standard of Rome, yellow, the color of the sun, being marched right through the center of Seventh-day Adventists. Did Ellen White predict it? Did she prophesy that this denomination would be switching to Sunday worship? Yes, she did. But I'd like to warn you folks, it's not going to come in one big giant swoop. It's coming subtly, very subtly, in a way in which you won't perceive. In fact, I would predict that most Seventh-day Adventists will be worshiping on Sunday before they even know what they're doing. Let's look at some prophecies now by Ellen White concerning this most dreadful situation. From Southern Watchman, 6/28/04, men in responsible positions will not only ignore and despise the Sabbath themselves, but from the sacred desk. Now, folks, when she wrote this, there could only be one sacred desk, and that was the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That's the only one could even be considered here. Will urge upon the people the observance of the first day of the week, pleading tradition and custom in behalf of this man-made institution. But even more powerful than that is a quote from Review and Herald, Volume 1, page 405, 6/28/84. There is need of Sabbath reform among us, not somebody else, who profess to observe God's holy rest day. The Lord has a controversy with his professed people in these last days. In this controversy, men in responsible positions will take a course directly opposite to that pursued by Nehemiah, who, by the way, was a Sabbath keeper, a builder of the wall, not a terror downer. They will not only ignore and despise the Sabbath themselves, but they will try to keep it from others by burying it beneath the rubbish of custom and tradition. In churches, in large gatherings, in the open air, ministers will urge upon the people the necessity of keeping the first day of the week. Now, folks, before you can bury the Sabbath, before a dog can bury his bone, you have to have it first. So this can't be talking about somebody else. Us, remember? We've been looking today at the Seventh-day Adventist Corporation that has clearly become an unclean thing, that is clearly into spiritualism. And my friends, the Bible is clear to God's people. And that's what I like about the Bible. It's simple, straightforward. It states here in 2 Corinthians 6, 17 and 18, "Wherefore, come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing." That touch means in the Greek to be connected in any way. And notice the beautiful promise to God's people. "And I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty." But God, folks, God doesn't give you the promise until you meet the conditions. You must be separate and touch not. Don't be connected. And then you will be his son and his daughter. I don't know how else to make this impact more strongly upon you as a Seventh-day Adventist than to let you know that if you're a member of the Seventh-day Adventist organization, folks, there's no way around it. You're a member of the world, the new world order. And it's environmental Sabbath. And you are being led to observe that day. You've become a part of something that has grasped hands, that has united itself with this one world church and one world system. Yes, you didn't ask to be a part of it, but now you must obey the call of Revelation 18:4. "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." In closing, I would like to remind you a quote that Ellen White states in 2SM, that Sunday exaltation would convert this church to Babylon. Amen.